Welcome, everyone. Welcome to another Everybody Reads, Multnomah County Library's Everybody Reads program. Thank you for joining us here tonight. I am your host. I'm Sarika Mehta, and my pronouns are she and her. So I should tell you I'm a radio podcast host, producer, etc. If it's for the ears, I've done it. And I'm also a sign language interpreter. So if it's not for the ears, I've also done it. And I just want to say welcome again. I'm joined by our fabulous library staff, Israel and Allison. They're behind the scenes and they're here to make sure everything is running smoothly. And so if you have any tech questions, you can shoot them that way. We are going to start by posting some rules for this online library program in the chat. And Allison has just posted them. Thank you. I'll give you guys a second to read those rules. And then we will have a land acknowledgement. Okay. I would like to offer this land acknowledgement. Multnomah County is sited upon the ancestral homelands of the Multnomah, Molalla, Cathlamet, Chinook, Clackamas, Tualatin, Kalapuya, and many other indigenous nations. These nations have become the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde and the Confederated Tribes of the Siletz Indians, as well as the Chinook Nation and Cowlitz Nation in Washington State. Land acknowledgements recognize and respect the enduring relationship that Indigenous people have with their traditional homelands. The effects of colonization can be felt today, and land acknowledgements are a step down a small step to the path of repair, reconciliation, and cultural revitalization. And this land acknowledgement in particular is courtesy of Melanie Phi. So thank you for letting me do that. We have some housekeeping information. We would love if you could all, just one second, okay. So I have my small child here. He will be participating, possibly my other small child will too. We would love if you all would introduce yourselves in the chat or when the chat is opened with your name, your location, and if you're local, your library location, and your pronouns if you would like. We're going to keep you all muted while myself and Vishavjit, our honored guest, is presenting. And then we're going to use the chat mainly for asking questions. So hold your questions until the very end. I promise we'll have at least a little bit of time. So as I said before, this is the 20th anniversary of Everybody Reads, the library's community-wide reading project. As you may know, this year's title is the graphic memoir, Good Talk by Mira Jacob. And we're exploring all the themes of her book through these free online events, including a workshop on equity in comics, the J-Ho dance party by DJ Prashant, and more. And all of this is made possible in part by gifts to the Library Foundation, with Mira Jacob's lecture in particular, in March, made possible by Literary Arts. And while you are checking out these free events, take a look at everything we have planned for Black History Month, which is this month, February. You can find links to Everybody Reads and Black History Month in the chat. You can also pick up your very own free copy of Good Talk at your nearest, just a second, baby, at your nearest Multnomah County Library while supplies last. Good Talk is also available as an ebook and an audiobook from the library catalog on demand. Right now, you can pick up a do-it-yourself zine at your local library so you can experiment with creating your own illustrated memoir. The zine Erase This was created by artist, designer, and educator Marissa Yang Bertucci. And now, I know you're excited, baby. And now, without further ado, I present our honored, brilliant guest, Vishavjit Singh.
Thank you very much, Sarika. Thank you everyone for joining. I'm coming to you. I'm actually not going to tell you exactly right now where I'm coming to you from, but thank you to the library staff for having me here today. And thanks to all of you for taking time as well. What I'd like to do is I'm going to quickly share my screen. And I'm going to use a lot of cartoons and some photographs to share with you, to have this conversation, share my story, and also share my story. So I actually like to start my talks always by posing a couple of questions. So if you don't mind putting your responses in chat, that would be really awesome. What are some of the first words that come to mind when you see me? So you might have seen me a few moments ago as you came in and saw me on the screen. Just curious, what comes to mind? And actually, sorry, okay, here we go.
I'll read some of the.
Thank you. Thank you.
I don't see any messages. Oh, I'm sorry. I do see one. It says, well read, from Kate, loving the shelves. A message saying religious, and someone else saying calm, and so many books. That's also my favorite part, is checking out the library behind the scenes. Someone else says familiar. Thank you, Divya. Elizabeth says, I've seen your Captain America. Elide, I apologize if I'm butchering your name, says educated. Paul, my pal Paul says epic beard. Becky says calm but powerful. And Linda says, is this the guy with superpower? Yes.
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 Okay, thank you for that. Thank you for your responses. Okay, so the next question is, where do you think I'm from?
Lizzie says, Sikh, lots of books and love the specs. I think that was to the previous question you were asking. So the current question is, where do you think Vishavjit is from? And Tina says, Sikh, friendly and open. Elizabeth posts India. Georgia says America. Oh, we have Portland, East Coast and Midwest, and someone else says Portland. Someone else says Brooklyn, land of hipsters. Kate says New York, and they're coming in fast. America, but
yes, I see them. I'm reading them.
Canada, India, Midwest, could be from anywhere.
So I'm going to pause here at could be from anywhere, because I thank you everyone for responding. I really appreciate this, and I get to do this in many different parts of the US. And the reason I ask these questions is, we all do this, right? We see new people, new things, and our brains are cued to kind of have some stereotypical responses. It's not a good or bad thing. It's just, it's how we are wired, but it does have implications at times, right? Things both implicit and explicit. So it's interesting, all the different responses that are coming in. They're all over the globe, mostly in Asia, in the US, all over the US. But I think it's interesting, the last one that I really like is could be from anywhere. I rarely get a response like that, or somebody saying, I don't know. It's just hard to tell where you're from when you look at somebody. But most of us kind of fall into that trap that, our brains help us fall into, which is you think by looking at somebody, right? But America is it's such an amazing place. We come from all over the globe, or at least our heritage we can trace from all over the globe. Some of us are from here, but that's a very small minority. But we're from all over the place. So what I'm going to do now is, having set sort of, thanks to your responses, we kind of have a baseline here in terms of how you perceive me, not knowing who I am. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share my story with you. So thank you, Sarika, for reading the responses. So I was born in so these are illustrations I've created out of actual photographs. Some are from my imagination, but this is an actual illustration that I created from, I was born in a Washington, D.C. Women's hospital that was actually built during the Civil War era for women of soldiers who were fighting in the Civil War. The hospital does not exist anymore. It's actually very close to the White House, used to be very close to the White House. So I'm an American citizen. I'm American by birth. And I spent the first 4 years of my life in the suburbs of Maryland, Washington, D.C. quite a bit. My dad used to work in Washington, D.C. And so I want to ask you this question. And one thing that happens to all of us who are certainly born in the US, it might even happen in other parts of the world, you get a few labels placed upon you, whether you like it or not, whether your parents want those labels for you, at least right now. It might change in the future. You get a name if your parents come up with a name, but you get a name. You get a gender label, which is changing now. My home city in New York, actually, we used to have male, female, but now they have a third option that parents can select. But race is also another one where somebody in a hospital administration decides what your race is, or hopefully they ask the parents. So I'm curious, take a guess what my birth certificate from Washington, D.C. in the 1970s says my race is. This one is going to be interesting, Sarika, so I'm going to rely on you to read this.
I'm on it. We have Caucasian, Asian. Someone else says either Asian or white. Someone else says South Asian, Asian. Black. Okay, it was the 70s, black.
Okay.
With no turban on a baby head, Hispanic. Clever. Someone else says black. So good call, thinking about the era and that there's no turban on a baby's head. Good job.
Yeah, it's interesting that people are taking the era into account. So actually, I'm surprised some of you actually got it right, because usually, and I get to ask this question from Seattle to New York, and most people don't get it right. I'm going to show you my birth certificate so you know that I'm not lying here, or I'm not making things up. This is my birth certificate. If you see at the bottom right, I'm white. I'm Caucasian. Technically Caucasian, but in the US we confuse, or in this story of Black and white people, and it's a story, perhaps one of the greatest, one of the most tragic stories ever told. Everybody who happens to be within this story, if you really look at the origins of the story, everybody who happens to be from South Asia is considered Caucasian, and in the US we confuse Caucasian with white. So technically I'm white, right? That's what the powers to be in Washington, D.C. at the time in the 70s said that I'm white. But I find it interesting, and the reason I share this is we're having conversations about race today in America, have been having them for a long time, but really having very robust conversations. And at the bottom of this conversation is a simple question. Who got to decide, who got to make up this story and say somebody is white, somebody's Black? We know what the color of white and Black looks like. The background of this slideshow is white. Most of us can agree on that, right? I don't know if a single human being whose skin color is white or not a single human being whose skin color is Black. We're all a shade of brown, right? But we have this story in America. Hundreds of years we've followed this story, and you might say today, I don't care, I don't see color, and there are people who say that, but unfortunately we have a society, culture, systems that are built around this story, and that has consequences. And I know most people don't see me as white, I don't see myself as white, but we do see a lot of people as white and Black, and that has consequences. But I just wanted to sort of frame, as I share my story, to acknowledge the fact that so many things, so many rules, cultural, societal rules we live by are also stories that are created by human beings. We love stories, we love creating stories, we love telling stories, but stories are not always the truth. And they have consequences, bad and good, and they change over time. And my hope is we will somehow transform this story, move past it, and heal from the damage that this story has done. So my parents are from India, and my parents decided when I was 4 years old, they had their own personal reasons, they decided they wanted to move back to India. So I'm the younger child of two kids that my parents have. And so we moved back and moved back to the capital city of India, which is New Delhi, which is a city much bigger than my city, home city right now, New York City, approximately 20 million residents, a much older city than New York. And so my parents belonged to a religious ethnic group called the Sikh faith, the Sikh religion, also known as Sikhism at times. It's a very small group, even in India. It's less than 2%. So India has well more than 1 billion people, very small community, but it stands out because Sikh men and women, they don't cut their hair. Men have turbans, usually bun on top, turbans. Boys have, what you see on this screen is me in first or second grade wearing what we call a patka, but it's a small turban. So we stand out. And so across the globe, if you look at in the UK, Canada, Malaysia, Singapore, are significant pockets of Sikhs. And the reason I like to share this photograph is I went to an independent school. We had uniforms to wear. A lot of schools in India, you wear uniforms. But I started wearing glasses really young. I was 6 years old when I was I started wearing glasses. And as a 1970s baby, glasses were not considered cool when I was a kid. Um, I got bullied a lot at school, out on the streets, in my own family. I mean, people just, they thought some tragedy has fallen on me, that I had to wear glasses. My parents went to the step of, they said, okay, how do we get rid of these glasses? So they got me hard contact lenses. Some of you know what hard contact lenses are. They're not comfortable things to wear, little pieces of glasses. We have soft contact lenses now, but I tried them for a few weeks, did not work. I had to end up in a hospital one day. I had a piece of dust that went behind my contact lens, and I said, okay, forget it. We're not going to do this. I'm going to wear glasses and I'm going to live with however people respond to it. So one of the things that happened over the years is I speak 3 languages. English certainly is my first language in many ways. Punjabi is my native tongue. Hindi is a language that's spoken by a lot of people in India. And I kind of learned Punjabi and English first, and Hindi pretty quickly as a young child. So I, learned these 3 languages, navigating in these languages, and family members, friends, at times strangers, started calling me variations of the word ugly in all those 3 languages. So I grew up, so by the time, I'm going to show you my next illustration here. This is me in high school. I had a growth spurt. I've always been skinny. I still am skinny. So with glasses and being skinny and also belonging to an ethnic minority, it brought its own challenges. And I'm by nature a very shy, introverted guy. A kid, grew up to be an adult who was very shy and introverted. So unfortunately, I didn't get the memo that when somebody, is harassing you or bullying you, you should tell somebody, you should go tell your parents or a friend or certainly a teacher or somebody you trust. But I did not. So I lived through years of getting bullied, being told you don't belong because I belong to an ethnic minority, or you don't look good. So I moved back to the United States after high school. And I always knew as a young child, I'm going to do that. I'm going to go to the US, that's home for me. That's the land of my birth. And I'm going to go to the universities there. So I moved back after high school, late 80s, first to the city of Los Angeles, very diverse. And I'm thinking, wow, this is going to be a great move, back to the land of my birth. And just before heading to college in Ohio, I got a job, struggled to actually get a job, eventually got a job in a mall at a hot dog stand. And something I did not anticipate is that when I move back to the US, people are also going to see me as somebody who doesn't belong. So I now had a new set of challenges where people just would call me things like raghead, genie, go back home, laugh on my face. So I went to college freshman year in Ohio State, and then I transferred back to California, to University of California system. This is an illustration from a photograph in my sophomore year when I basically decided, okay, I don't want to stand out anymore. I want to fit in. I want to become invisible. That was a desirable thing for me. So I said, okay, how do I do that? I'll take off my turban, because most people in America don't seem to respond very well to a turban. They don't seem to place me as somebody who could be from the United States. So I took off my turban, didn't tell my parents, who were still in India at the time. And I decided, okay, I'm going to next cut my hair. So I had a ponytail for a few weeks, and then I said, okay, I'm going to cut my hair and, try to fit in. And I mean, I still remember the day I cut my hair and I stepped out with short hair. It was kind of magical, right? I mean, suddenly a lot of eyes were not on me. People didn't stare at me as much. And I was like, oh, this is what it feels like to be, normal, when people are not looking at you, staring at you. And so I kind of spent the next 10 years trying to figure out, okay, who am I? What's my identity? I'm fitting in, but how do I get to define myself? So I had very interesting experiences in Santa Barbara, where I went to undergrad. Then I eventually went to Berkeley for grad school. A lot of people confused me for being Hispanic. People would come up to me and start speaking in Spanish, which I'm sure is an experience not only myself, but I'm sure many from South Asia have that experience, and vice versa as well. I had many friends who were have heritage from Mexico, Guatemala, Panama, and other places, and sometimes they were confused for being South Asian. So I went on this 10-year journey to rediscover myself, to find who I am. And what came to my rescue is something that some of you noticed. When I asked you the question, what words come to mind? It's books. Something that I fell in love with in college. I did not read a single book cover to cover, and I am at some level ashamed to acknowledge that while we're having this talk as part of a library system. My dad, a very well-read man who used to tell us he's very well-read when we were kids, but for whatever reason, some of them are financial reasons, he did not have any books at home. He did not encourage us to read books. So I didn't get to read a single book cover to cover for pleasure until I was in college, and I had roommates and friends who loved books. And so I started reading books because I was partly jealous, and I also thought there must be something magical about these things that people have whole bookshelves of. I had a roommate in sophomore year and into junior year, and he became a good friend of mine. He had a bookshelf in his bathroom. I mean, he read books all the time. And I was like, well, maybe I should give it a shot. So I did start reading books for pleasure, and I fell in love with them. And through books, I discovered people like Oliver Sacks, Aldous Huxley, Frantz Fanon, Pluto. I mean, there's Plato, and so many. And so for me, after a few years, I really fell in love with books about Buddhism. Buddhism is a very accessible faith, way of life through books. And my entry into Buddhism was really mostly through Tibetan Buddhism, although we have so many teachers, Thich Nhat Hanh, who recently passed away, Vietnamese Buddhism, Japanese Buddhism, Zen Buddhism. There's so many journeys within Buddhism that are so easily accessible through books. So I fell in love with Buddhism. And so my journey back into the Sikh faith kind of comes in through Buddhism. And in my late 20s, early 30s, I finally said to myself, okay, you know what? I left this faith, this heritage I was born into. I'm going to give it a shot for the first time in my life. So I moved. This was kind of happening in parallel while I was moving to Berkeley for grad school to study public health. For the first few months, I stayed with my brother, who had his own journey. He had moved from India to the US as a software engineer. And he was really into the Sikh faith. So it was kind of strange. I was coming from a Buddhism, Taoism phase. He's coming from a Sikhism kind of phase. And it was a strange few months, but it was kind of really powerful as well. And so I decide, okay, I'm gonna don the turban. I'm gonna grow my hair long. It took me 2 years to grow my hair from bald head to I had a mohawk, a short phase of a mohawk, just a few hours. I didn't have the courage to step out with a mohawk out on streets of California. So it took me 2 years, grew my hair long, put it on top of my head in a bun, and I donned a turban for the first time in 10 years in August 2001. And by this time, I actually was living in Connecticut and working in New York State, a few miles north of New York City. So it's August 2001, and most of you know what happened. Well, all of you know what happened a month later, the attacks of 9/11, the tragedy of 9/11. And 9/11 really had a very profound impact on all of us, but some of us more than others. I had to process that tragedy as an American, but I also had to live with the fact that now suddenly, within minutes at work and out on the streets of New York, well, New York State, and eventually in New York City, I was the ultimate other in the weeks and months and years after 9/11. Everybody took liberty to call me names: Osama bin Laden, Taliban, go back home, terrorist, flipping me off. It was intense. It was really uncomfortable. I did not leave my home for 2 weeks. And when I did, Even on highways, people would roll down their windows while driving at 60, 65 miles an hour to do their level best to scream out of their windows while I'm driving, to tell me off. So I realized what was happening. I understood people are ignorant about who I am. People are hurt, they're vulnerable, they're anxious, they're fearful, because I was feeling those emotions. But I still, was asking myself, why do I have to go through this? I understand people are ignorant, they're feeling hurt, but why do people have to unload their vulnerability and fears and anxieties on other people? You find a way to process them, you go home, you do what you have to do. But unfortunately, human beings do this, right? We do it all the time. We do it in all cultures. We take out our vulnerabilities on other people. We take liberties with our ignorance and our stereotypes and our vulnerabilities to unload on other people. So the question that I had posed with, to you, a benign sounding question, where do you think I'm from, might sound benign, but in a post 9/11 environment, where I'm from and where you perceived that I'm from, it takes a very profound meaning, because those, and most Americans, even today, their first instinct is to see me not as American. And so when you have something like 9/11 happening, it's very profound. So the first victim of hate and bias crime after 9/11 was a Sikh man in Arizona. He was a gas station owner who was shot and killed. And since then, many brown people, Sikh, Hindu, Christian, Jewish, Hispanics, Italians, have been attacked, killed, verbally abused. And it's, it kind of goes up and down with news cycles. So there are certain times when things get better. And even now, we've had incidents where people misperceive those who wear turbans and beards and take liberty and tell them, go back home, or worse. So what came to my rescue, fortunately, was a cartoon. A few weeks after 9/11, everybody was trying to respond to the attacks of 9/11, and cartoonists were doing a great job of responding to what happened in Afghanistan. Well, eventually what happened in, as we responded to 9/11 and at home. And I remember this one cartoonist, his name is Mark Fury. He lives in the Bay Area in San Francisco. He still does. He eventually won a Pulitzer Prize. He created a cartoon titled, what was the title? Find the Terrorist. That was the title of the cartoon. It's an animated cartoon and fast rotating images of men. So you had to click on each. This was an animated cartoon. So you click on the face and you try to get an introduction to, who is the terrorist. So there was a brown man, there was a Hindu man, Sikh man, Hispanic man, and a white man. And it turns out that white man, he was Joey, and he had committed a hate crime against a fellow American who happened to be Muslim. And Mark made the point, this cartoonist, that somebody who's committing a hate crime in post 9/11 America happens to be a terrorist. It was a profound point he was making, because even to this day, most news outlets, most political leaders in America will not use the word terrorist for Caucasians or white people. Those words are usually reserved for brown men or black men. So that was, to me, very profound. When I saw that cartoon, I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. And he did capture my predicament. I had never seen Sikhs, turban and beards being represented usually in a nice way in cartoons. So Mark captured my predicament, and I realized after a few weeks, he's not going to probably create another cartoon capturing my story. So I decided, okay, I'm going to start creating cartoons. I'm going to teach myself how to create cartoons. And I was an engineer by day, and I became a cartoonist by night, and I've been creating cartoons ever since. And I'm going to show you a few cartoons of mine. I'm going to actually quickly skip this slide here, because I want to make sure I sort of get through the story, and me and Sarika get to have a conversation and hopefully take your question. This was one of the early cartoons I created. It's an eye chart. Most of you recognize, hopefully, as an eye chart. It's easy to read from the top. I'm not what you think I am. Look beyond the turban and beard. And the point that I'm trying to raise here is, this instinct we have of judging people based on looks. You might guess correctly, but it's not doing us any favors as human beings, as societies. So I really want us to take a step back and say, okay, I'm going to take a guess here, but I don't know this person. This person is a stranger to me. The only way I can get to know them is if they tell me who they are. That's the only way you're going to know who somebody is. This is a cartoon created based on a real life character. His name is Vishavjit Singh. He lives in the United Kingdom. He is from India. He has been in the United Kingdom for the past 30 plus years. He's a farmer by trade, lost his wife, moved to the UK to stay with his kids, was lonely, got depressed. So he started running and he got really good at running. So he started running marathons and he was very good at running marathons. He started breaking world records in his age category in the late 80s. He's 85, 86 years old, and he kept running until the age of 100. And he kept breaking world records until the age of 100. He does not run marathons anymore. He only runs 5 and 10K now. He raises money for charity. He's still alive. He turned 110 this past April, and he still runs. I consider him a real life superhero, somebody who, he raises money for charity. And by the way, when he came to New York City, there were people when he ran the marathon who took the effort and time to call him Osama bin Laden from the sidelines. But I consider him one of my favorite human beings on the planet, who, despite whatever challenges he had in life, he turned it into something very positive. So cartoons, where do I get my ideas for cartoons? From all over the place. My own experience, real life stories. I dream in turban and beards. So you've seen hot air balloons. You probably have not seen a hot air balloon with a bun on top. But physically, it's possible you can have a hot air balloon with a bun on top. So this was a morning dream I had many years ago, and I sketched it. And I'd love to show it to people that maybe one day somebody will create a Sikh hot air balloon, and you can write on it, and you can ask somebody, why is there a bun on top of a hot air balloon? And somebody can then tell you a little story. It's inspired by Sikh people who have long hair and have buns on top of their heads. We can certainly use humor to educate people. Okay. This is a fictional cover of a magazine that you all probably have heard of, the New Yorker magazine, almost 100 years old, famous for its cartoons. Now, New Yorker, for most part, usually has had cartoons that are not very political. It's, usually humor, social, cultural humor. They have lately, in the last few years, have gotten into more political covers for the magazine. Why did I create this cover? Most cities in America today have a policy that somebody who looks like me cannot serve on police forces. There are rules, uniform rules. You have to look a certain way, clean shaven. Somebody made up this rule that you have to have a clean shaven face, right? It's human beings who make up these rules. And to most people, it might make sense, but I like to remind people, not many years ago, in the last century, women could not serve in police forces. African Americans could not serve in police force. Hispanic Americans could not serve. Indigenous Americans could not serve. Why? Because people made up reasons, right? Women are not strong enough. African Americans are not full human beings, right? I mean, we make up our own rules and then we justify them, and we can be very, very good at making up those rules. So today, these rules exist for Sikhs, Muslim men. By the way, the United States Armed Forces also does not allow Sikhs to serve. You have to fight, put in a legal exception. We used to be able to serve until the early 80s, and President Reagan actually created a new policy that we could not serve. So again, it's human-made policies. We have to be able to say, look, it doesn't make sense. Let's change it. Let's be more inclusive, right? We've done it. We've done better. We've made a lot of progress. Let's do this as well. I will say, though, my home city of New York now allows turbans. It does not allow unshaven full beards. And there are other cities that are changing these policies, but hopefully in the near future, that will change as well. Okay, I would like to talk about Canada, our lovely neighbors to the north that take a lot of pride that they're more progressive than us. Might be true, but that does not mean they don't have problems. A few years ago, in the eastern province of Quebec, there is a federation, soccer federation for little kids, middle schoolers. It's managed by adults, and the adults who manage this federation decided Kids with turbans cannot play soccer. Why? Because they're a danger to themselves and other kids on the field. It does not make sense. When I share this story with most people, with kids, they're all like, well, that doesn't make sense, Vishavjit. I'm like, yes, you're right. We should tell these adults it doesn't make sense. This became national, international news. Fortunately, it had a good ending. The policy was taken back, and nobody ever really explained, honestly, why this policy came into place. Although behind the scenes, we kind of, the stories were bubbling up that the adults who manage this federation in Quebec did not want Muslim kids to play soccer, but they didn't want to say it out loud as Muslim kids. So they were smart. They're like, what can we do to prevent Muslim kids to play soccer? Let's have an en masse rule for anybody who has religious artifacts, Jewish yarmulke, Muslim skull caps, Christian crosses, Sikh turbans, none of you are allowed. Right. So people get, as I mentioned, people, they're smart about their racism. I'll share another example. Many cities in Europe, nations that are beacons of democracy, have come up with new policies in the 21st century preventing Muslim and Sikh men from, for example, getting driver's license. I cannot get driver's license in certain cities in Europe because they will not allow me to have my turban on. I cannot walk into some public buildings in Europe because they have policies against religious artifacts not being allowed in a public building. France, believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, France does not allow turbans, any religious artifacts in public schools. My kids cannot go to a public school with a long hair and a turban on top. So either they have to go to a private school, be homeschooled, or leave France. These are 21st century policies. So again, beacons of democracy who unfortunately are taking some steps back. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I should have actually put a question in here about this. This is an amazing story. The first city in the United States that has had a Sikh mayor with a turban and beard, ladies and gentlemen, is not Portland, it's not Seattle, it's not Philadelphia, it's not New York City, it's Charlottesville. Like human beings, cities have complicated histories. And Charlottesville forever have the distinction of having the first Sikh mayor with a turban and beard. And we know Charlottesville has a very complicated history around racism, but that does not mean Charlottesville has not made progress, and that Charlottesville is not more progressive in some ways than New York City and Seattle or Portland, right? So this is an example from 2012 where this gentleman, who happens to be an architect, was on the city council, was selected to be the mayor of that city. Most of my cartoons are about people with turban and beards because I'm self-projecting. I don't see myself represented in American culture broadly. But one thing that I have not been able to not respond to is race and policing, and at large, how African Americans and Black Americans have to live with some of the challenges in the US. So as you've heard my story, post 9/11, it's been very hard for brown people like myself, especially those who have turban and beards. But I'll be very honest to say this. My life is a lot easier than a Black man's life. I live in Harlem, New York. And I can tell you this much, I don't get pulled over by cops. I don't get cops called on me. People harass me, they tell me to go back home, but I don't have, Sikhs at large in America do not have cops called on them. That story that I mentioned to you, the story of Black and white people, that 500-plus-year-old story, it's a very powerful story. And it's in our DNA, it's in our culture, it's in our history, it's in our architecture. And that story today is what's impacting how Black Americans get to live. So it is not a statistical accident that on a monthly basis, somewhere in America, a Black man gets shot and killed by cops, or gets cops called on them. It's how we see Black people. I'll share an example with you. This one of the last cartoons I'm going to share with you. This was a cartoon created in response to a story on NPR a few years ago. It was a story based out of the city of Los Angeles that does community policing. Many cities in America have been doing community policing. And so as part of this effort, an African-American civil rights lawyer got access to police officers one-on-one in private settings, anonymous. I don't want to know your name. We're not going to record your name. Just tell me, what are some of the challenges you face as a police officer and what's working? And as in this story, one thing that stood out to me that I still remember, this lawyer basically said, every police officer white, black, Hispanic, man, woman did not matter. They almost all of them acknowledged in private, they shared this vulnerability. I fear black people. I fear black boys. They said that in this very private space, knowing nobody's recording them, nobody's going to share their names. They said that in their private space. And I would like to venture that a lot of us, somewhere deep inside, if we don't have fear of black people, we certainly have stereotypes of black people. Most Americans do. So keeping that in mind, police officers have a very difficult job. And now add on top of that, you get called into a crime scene or a potential crime scene. You have this fear of black people. And now you're going into that tense situation. Stereotypes are amazing things. In that tense situation, just like, I mentioned to you my own story that people see me as not American and, tell me to go back home. In that tense situation, those stereotypes kicking, that fear kicks in. And so a wallet becomes a gun, right? A phone becomes a gun. A black person in a Starbucks becomes suspicious. A black student at Yale University taking a nap becomes suspicious. These are actual stories, ladies and gentlemen, that I'm sharing with you, right? So I acknowledge that I grew up both in American South Asian culture with a lot of anti-black bias. It's taken me a very long time to unlearn those. I still have some ways to go. I still at times in my head have anti-black ideas, thoughts that come up, and I have to check myself and say, okay, Vishavjit, okay, you had it because you're American, you're South Asian, you have it, but don't act on it. But some of these impulses are also unconscious bias as well. So those are the hard ones. There is this Captain America connection to my story that some of you mentioned early on. About 10 years ago, friends and fans were telling me, Vishavjit, you should go to a comic festival, especially New York City Comic Festival. We have one of the biggest comic festivals. So I decided in the year 2011, okay, I'll go. I'll go as an exhibitor. I'll showcase my work. I'll rent a table. And so that year, the first Captain America movie had come out. And I had this idea that Captain America should have a turban and beard. Captain America should fight hate and intolerance, one of the best villains that are out there. So I created this poster. And I went to the New York City Comic Con, and people saw the poster and they kind of, so this was a marketing ploy that I deployed, and people were just like, wow, that's interesting. Some people liked it. Some people were like, why does Captain America look like a Muslim? Why does Captain America have a turban and beard? So it started conversations, and I'm like, well, maybe I'm onto something. And a photographer in passing asked me, Vishavjit, you should come back next year dressed up as Captain America. And I said to her, I don't think so. Absolutely not. And my reasons, she didn't ask me why, but I knew my reasons. I'm skinny, I have a turban and beard, post 9/11 America. People have told me all kinds of things, go back home and worse. I don't want to stand out anymore, or any more than I already do. So it took her a year. She convinced me a year later to don the uniform. I practiced at home with a shield, freaked out. She bought me a uniform online from an outlet in China. I put it on at home. I freaked out. I went to Sports Authority, bought football and baseball pads, shoved them in my legs, shoulders to make myself look big. My wife said, Vishavjit, you look like a cartoon. Please don't do this. If you're going to step out as Captain America, you will step out as yourself. It took me weeks, prepared myself, and June 2013, I did step out as Captain America. This is Central Park, and something very magical happened that day. I literally felt like I was in a parallel universe. Suddenly, people saw me as American. People started coming up to me, taking photos of me without permission, giving me hugs. And ladies and gentlemen, mind you, I'm not somebody who gets hugs from strangers, and never. But in that uniform, I do. People followed me for hours. This was an accident. We did not plan on me coming out of the subway station with the A train. I got access to a fire truck. There was a parade happening that day. We did not realize it. This was a fire truck that was a command center truck. We asked the officers politely, can we have your truck? Captain America can have the truck. They all left their truck and let me have this truck for 20 minutes. That was my privilege that day. The privilege of a fictional superhero does not exist, but that uniform has that power that a turban and bearded man, American that day became safe enough for people to say, you know what, yeah, you can have my truck. I got pulled into weddings, believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen. It was a strange day. I realized the power of fictional stories. You can use stories to do good. One last thing I want to share with you. Sarika, how am I doing on time?
Well, it's 6:40, it's 47 here, I
Okay,
think.
good. We're good. We're good. Okay, awesome. We will have
So
10
we have
minutes for
little
our conversation.
time.
So this last story I'm going to share with you. So I was out for 9 hours. And somewhere in the middle of that day, I was in Central Park, and you see this little kid up there? He saw me silently for 10 minutes. And he eventually goes to me, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm Captain America for the day." "No, you're not." "Why not?" "Because you're not white." I'm thinking in my, I have this conversation in my head, okay, little kid, if you saw my birth certificate, you would have a different sort of conversation happening in your head. But I said to him, okay, that might be true that I'm not white, but you do know Captain America is not real. He's a fictional superhero created in 1941. We're in the 21st century. Captain America could be Black, Hispanic, Asian, turban and beard as well. He thought for a moment and he goes, Black, yes. Hispanic, maybe. Turban and beards, no. And the thing about this kid was he was not being mean. I saw him. I mean, he was a sweet kid. He was being very honest. That's the beautiful thing about kids is they're very transparent in their, just even if they see differences. And I saw him as being just genuinely honest about how he sees me. And I said, okay, I hear you. But keep in mind for the rest of your life, you're going to have this image of me. Captain America, turban beard, skinny, glasses, and you will never be able to voluntarily delete that image from your head. And we parted ways, and I thought this was the last day I will ever do this, but this whole performance art took a life of its own. I wrote an op-ed essay. The photographer released a few photographs. I started getting invitations to late night comedy shows, and I've been a performance artist since. I'm a full-time DEI public speaker. I do performance art. I travel across the US. I share my story, and I encourage, inspire, motivate others to share stories, because once you get to know somebody's story, it's a little bit hard, not impossible, it's a little hard to stereotype them. So I ask this question of you one more time. What words come to mind now that you know a little bit of my story? So Sarika, let's see what responses come in.
Folks need a little bit of time to type their answer. Oh, Becky says, still small, yet
I like
powerful.
that.
We have superhero, brave, a winding journey from Lizzie. Life is unpredictable. Brave, determined, creative, integrity, brave and funny. And Johanna says, Captain America. Margot says, joyful. We have courageous from Elide. Any others?
You know what is amazing is about this, and I think you all kind of know this. This is the power of stories. You know a little bit about my story. And this is true for all of us, right? Even I know I sometimes judge people. If we all gave each other somehow as society, we gave each other a chance to tell their stories. I'm not saying we're going to live in a perfect world, but we would definitely live in a world that's going to be a bit more chaotic and complex for us to quickly rush to judgments and perhaps, have this understanding, you know what? Okay, we have a lot in common. And one last thing I would like to say is, I know we hear this thing, oh, we have a lot in common, the love and compassion, we're beautiful human beings. I will say this to you, what we also have in common, probably more than anything else, is our ability to have prejudices and stereotypes about each other. That is one of the most common attributes we have so maybe that should be our starting point. Hey, here are my stereotypes and prejudices about other people. What are yours? And I really feel that if we really sort of brought that aspect of our stories in, and it's a vulnerable space, we might be able to better solve the problems that we're having in America today, because we have camps today in America. We have judgments, racist, this, that, I don't do this, there. I really genuinely feel that if we went into that space saying, okay, I have stereotypes about Black people as well, for example, so do you. Let that be a starting point for a conversation. And maybe we will have the difficult conversations that civil rights attorney had with police officers in LA. On that note, I'll stop here so me and Sarika can hopefully have a conversation. And I'm sorry, I did my level best to stay into that 35 minutes. I might have gone a little bit over.
That's okay. I think everyone enjoyed it so much. I would say let's give a hand, but Zoom. So we'll just give a wave.
Thank you.
And you got a lot of love from the chat. Of course, we have the Zoom version of applause. I want to give a shout out to my auntie, Kalpana Fai. She says, the words that come to mind with knowing your story a little bit more is courage. We have a beautiful bridge, and there's a lot of love from chat. Somebody asks if you guys can be friends. So that's delightful too. I do the same thing. I'm like, oh, I want to be your best friend now. We had a question from way early on in the presentation from the chat, question from Kate, which was, what was the first book you ever read?
Ooh, that's a very good question. I don't know.
I don't even know
if I can remember. Actually, well, no, I don't think I remember that now. That's a great question. And I'm going to have to now think about that, and maybe I will get to that answer.
And maybe we can all think about that. We have another question. So what is next for you?
Oh, that's a great question. So I am actually right now, some of you might know it, Sarika, I think you know this, but I am working on a short animation film. I have been working on it for the last 2-3 years. There's a filmmaker from Southern California who I worked on actually, I'm going to go to the next screen here so you can see this. There is a short film on YouTube called Red, White, and Beard. And you can Google it and find it. And so I worked with this filmmaker a few years ago, and him and 2 other filmmakers came to New York, spent 3 days with me, and created this wonderful short film. And so the second part of it is he really fell in love with my story. So he approached me a few years ago saying, Vishavjit, I want to actually tell your story. So we're actually working on a short animation, which is right now in final stages. We have an animation company in Australia that is working on it. It's going to come out in April. We're going to submit it to the top film festivals that are out there, Sundance, Cannes, Southwest by Southwest, and a whole lot of other film festivals in the US, a lot of local film festivals. And hopefully it gets accepted. It comes to cities all over the US and beyond. And our hope is at some point then we can just kind of launch it online so people can see it. So that's the really big project that I'm working on. And the other one that I really want to do is have a graphic novel, or maybe a kind of like a graphic novel slash or an illustrated memoir. So that's another thing that I would love to work on. Great question.
That was actually my proposal, was that you do a graphic novel memoir, not just because of Everybody Reads, although that's a good enough reason, but because it's totally my jam. So yes, get on that, and then you come back here and we talk about it.
Absolutely.
So we, I don't know if you want to end your screen share, if there's more with your slideshow.
I can stop, yes.
Then we can see you. Oh, now I lost you. Oh, there you are. Okay, we're in the gallery view right now. Should we? Okay, I see Linda has a question. Do you want to unmute or put on your camera, Linda? Linda, are you there?
There, okay.
Okay.
First it said that the host wouldn't allow. Okay, then on that note about your creating a graphic novel, have you read, or I recommend you read, Aren't You Hot in That?
I have heard about it. It's on my reading list, but now that you mention it again, I'm going to put it up my reading list. Yes.
Yeah, it will help you if you do a graphic memoir.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's hilarious.
Thank you.
And learn and teachable.
Absolutely.
Thank you. When I was watching or looking at the pictures again of your Sikh Captain America series, and I admittedly, after having kids, I sort of fell into a hole and I haven't kept up with all the Marvel films. I'm chronically 10 years behind on things. But I've noticed that there's been a lot of talk about costume upgrades in these new movies and in the more recent movies. And yours is straight up vintage, which I really enjoy.
Yeah.
How did you feel about the straight up vintage, which I think in the first movie, they kind of made fun of it. Well, didn't they poke a little bit of fun at his helmet and his costume in the first movie? Did I make that up? I might have made that up.
I mean, so you're right. I mean, there's a transition. Yeah. I mean, in the early days, when these films came out, you could only get those leotard skin tight uniforms.
Bright blue.
Yes, and I now wear the uniform that's inspired by Winter Soldier. So it's, it's really cooler looking. It's got padding on it. I actually need to upgrade now. So I really did feel very vulnerable when I first wore the old school. It really, I really felt naked. But once, people responded in a very positive way, I was like, okay. So yeah, that's an interesting journey. Yes. Costumes and how they evolve over time. That's a whole different story.
Awesome. And Lizzie has a question. Thank you, Lizzie. Did your children or do your children face the same struggles that you experienced?
It's a great question. Yeah. So I don't have my own kids, but I can tell you an unfortunate statistic. Sikh kids in America face, unfortunately, bullying happens in the US, right? It's actually not at very low levels, it does happen. But when you look at all the statistics, Sikh kids are bullied at twice the national average. So approximately 60 to 70% of Sikh kids report getting bullied. Even my home city of New York, that percentage of kids, and I'm talking about kids who go to Queens, it's a very diverse borough. They get harassed by kids from all different backgrounds. And what is unfortunate a lot of times, teachers and principals in those schools have not taken proactive steps to address those issues. So it's gotten better over the last few years, but we have long ways to go, long ways to. That's why I'm really big on our teachers, and we as adults need to be very transparent about our own vulnerabilities and biases with kids. And then kids are very smart. One of the smartest human beings on this planet. I work with them a lot. If we're honest about our vulnerabilities, they will be honest about theirs with you. And that is one of the strongest learning tools you don't tell kids, hey, don't do that, that's wrong. You tell kids, listen, when I was your age, and even when I was an adult, I did this and I realized this is not cool. Or maybe you got harassed and you share those stories. And that's what really get kids to go like, oh, okay, all right, I see that. So I use that strategy and it really does help when I work with kids. But that's a great question.
Actually, I think that somewhat answers Eric's question about how Sikh kids that you have met when you're dressed as Captain America and have responded seeing themselves. And I mean, it related, as I just said, that I have kids. I mean, to be perfectly honest, I have this fear too, because of the way what I experienced growing up, also born and raised here. And especially in a city like Portland, I'm not gonna lie, this is just the reality that I have. I worry for my two kids as they go through school. So far, so good.
Yeah.
But they're 5.5 and 2. So it's a long journey. And I hope things only improve, because when you and I were little, it was not a pretty place.
Yeah.
So
I will add one thing is, having worked with kids for the past few years, I do feel kids today are a lot more open to diversity than when I was their age. That's a silver lining. So that does not mean, that kids don't stereotype each other, they don't bully. The thing is, they are picking up those cues from parents, broader culture, but because of the internet, they're also exposed to a heck of a lot more diversity. But we have long ways to go. And I do feel storytelling is such a powerful tool. So I would encourage all of you, Sarika, you as well, get the little ones to somehow tell their stories, because as they start telling, kids connect to different parts. So what I find is kids connect to different parts of my story. And I become more human and American to them as they're like, oh, he was bullied as well. Oh, he has that too. And that hook it's beautiful, right? Then they just look past my turban and beard.
Maybe I'll just make you talk shit in my kids' schools.
Sure.
I'm going to use my personal hook there. It is 7:01 and I don't want to end this, but I think that I'm not allowed to keep going.
Yes.
Wait for library staff to tell me yay or nay. And Lizzie says that's a wonderful message. Thank you. And actually, you're getting lots of thank you and love from the chat.
Thank you all very much for being here. Wonderful questions. Your responses were amazing. Thanks for being very responsive to this question. And I think you all are a pretty amazing bunch. You're very well read. I can tell that. from your responses. Yeah, please keep having this. Please keep sharing the love of books, donate books if you can. And hopefully one day soon I will be in Portland in person and hope to see you.
So yeah, guys, we need to get Vishavjit here in person. It's not been happening, but when things are a little safer, let's all rally together and make that happen. See, we got Portland love coming in from.
Yes, I know. I go to Seattle. I was telling Sarika, I go to Seattle a lot. So I want to now move down to Portland. So we're going to make it happen in 2022.
Don't make me get all auntie on the situation, because I will. Okay.
Okay. All right. It's going to happen. I'm going to see you soon. I'm going to see you all soon. You all stay safe and well. Wish you all the best. And thank you again to the library, Allison, Sarika, Israel. All the best to you. And I look forward to hearing stories from Mira Jacobs' trip to Portland, or virtual trip. Is that a virtual trip? Am I?
No, it's a real live in
Oh,
person.
everyone, please go and tell everyone to go. Yes, that'll be awesome.
So feel free to make an extra trip. Thank you all so much for joining. Thank you so much, Vishavjit Singh. That was
Anytime.
incredible. I think we don't want to end, but we are a little bit past time. Thank you all for joining this evening. Super duper special shout out thanks to everyone that I texted very last minute with the last minute push, and for everyone else who joined too. Thank you for your questions.
Yes.
We have a survey for you all to fill out. It just takes 3 to 5 minutes, and it's posted in the chat. And it's posted again in the chat. Allison is on it. Israel is on it. And I really appreciate this event, especially as a South Asian American living in Portland. I love Everybody Reads. So thank you so much, Vishavjit. And thank you all for joining. Have a wonderful night.
Thank you, Sarika. Thank you all. Bye.
Hey, Allison, do you want me to just go ahead and shut her down? All right. Thanks, everyone.
Oh, I forgot to shout out my auntie. Happy birthday, Kaltnafe. Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome to another Everybody Reads, Multnomah County Library's Everybody Reads program. Thank you for joining us here tonight. I am your host. I'm Sarika Mehta, and my pronouns are she and her. So I should tell you, I'm a radio podcast host, producer, etc. If it's for the ears, I've done it. And I'm also a sign language interpreter. So if it's not for the ears, I've also done it. And I just want to say welcome again. I'm joined by our fabulous library staff, Israel and Allison. They're behind the scenes and they're here to make sure everything is running smoothly. And so if you have any tech questions, you can shoot them that way. We are going to start by posting some rules for this online library program in the chat. And Allison has just posted them. Thank you. I'll give you guys a second to read those rules. And then we will have a land acknowledgement. Okay. I would like to offer this land acknowledgement. Multnomah County is sited upon the ancestral homelands of the Multnomah, Molalla, Cathlamet, Chinook, Clackamas, Tualatin, Kalapuya, and many other indigenous nations. These nations have become the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde and the Confederated Tribes of the Siletz Indians, as well as the Chinook Nation and Cowlitz Nation in Washington State. Land acknowledgements recognize and respect the enduring relationship that Indigenous people have with their traditional homelands. The effects of colonization can be felt today, and land acknowledgements are a step down to the path, a small step to the path of repair, reconciliation, and cultural revitalization. And this land acknowledgement in particular is courtesy of Melanie Fye. So thank you for letting me do that. We have some housekeeping information. We would love if you could all, just one second, okay. So I've had my small child here. He will be participating, possibly my other small child will too. We would love if you all would introduce yourselves in the chat or when the chat is opened, with your name, your location, and if you're local, your library location, and your pronouns if you would like. We're going to keep you all muted while myself and Vishavjit, our honored guest, is presenting. And then we're going to use the chat mainly for asking questions. So hold your questions until the very end. I promise we'll have at least a little bit of time. So as I said before, this is the 20th anniversary of Everybody Reads, the library's community-wide reading project. As you may know, this year's title is the graphic memoir, Good Talk by Mira Jacob. And we're exploring all the themes of her book through these free online events, including a workshop on equity in comics, the Jai-Ho dance party by DJ Prashant, and more. And all of this is made possible in part by gifts to the Library Foundation, with Mira Jacob's lecture in particular, in March, made possible by Literary Arts. And while you are checking out these free events, take a look at everything we have planned for Black History Month, which is this month, February. You can find links to Everybody Reads and Black History Month in the chat. You can also pick up your very own free copy of Good Talk at your nearest, just a second, baby, at your nearest Multnomah County Library while supplies last. Good Talk is also available as an ebook and an audiobook from the library catalog on demand. Right now, you can pick up a do-it-yourself zine at your local library so you can experiment with creating your own illustrated memoir. The zine Erase This was created by artist, designer, and educator Marissa Yang Bertucci. And now, I know you're excited, baby. And now, without further ado, I present our honored, brilliant guest, Vishavjit Singh.
Thank you very much, Sarika. Thank you everyone for joining. I'm coming to you. I'm actually not going to tell you exactly right now where I'm coming to you from, but thank you to the library staff for having me here today. And thanks to all of you for taking time as well. What I'd like to do is I'm going to quickly share my screen. And I'm going to use a lot of cartoons and some photographs to share with you, to have this conversation, share my story, and also share my story. So I actually like to start my talks always by posing a couple of questions. So if you don't mind putting your responses in chat, that would be really awesome. What are some of the first words that come to mind when you see me? So you might have seen me a few moments ago as you came in and saw me on the screen. Just curious, what comes to mind? And actually, sorry, okay, here we go.
I'll read some of the.
Thank you. Thank you.
I don't see any messages. Oh, I'm sorry. I do see one. It says, well read, from Kate, loving the shelves. A message saying religious, and someone else saying calm, and so many books. That's also my favorite part, is checking out the library behind the scenes. Someone else says familiar. Thank you, Divya. Elizabeth says, I've seen your Captain America. Elide, I apologize if I'm butchering your name, says educated. Paul, my pal Paul says epic beard. Becky says calm but powerful. And Linda says, is this the guy with superpower? Yes.
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 Okay, thank you for that. Thank you for your responses. Okay, so the next question is, where do you think I'm from?
Lizzie says, Sikh, lots of books and love the specs. I think that was to the previous question you were asking. So the current question is, where do you think Vishavjit is from? And Tina says, Sikh, friendly and open. Elizabeth posts India. Georgia says America. Oh, we have Portland, East Coast and Midwest, and someone else says Portland. Someone else says Brooklyn, land of hipsters. Kate says New York, and they're coming in fast. America, but
yes, I see them. I'm reading them.
Canada, India, Midwest. Could be from anywhere.
So I'm going to pause here at could be from anywhere, because I thank you everyone for responding. I really appreciate this, and I get to do this in many different parts of the US. And the reason I ask these questions is, we all do this, right? We see new people, new things, and our brains are cued to kind of have some stereotypical responses. It's not a good or bad thing. It's just, it's how we are wired. But it does have implications at times, right? Things both implicit and explicit. So it's interesting, all the different responses that are coming in. They're all over the globe, mostly in Asia, in the US, all over the US. But I think it's interesting. The last one that I really like is could be from anywhere. I rarely get a response like that, or somebody saying, I don't know. It's just hard to tell where you're from when you look at somebody. But most of us kind of fall into that trap that, our brains help us fall into, which is you think by looking at somebody, right? But America is it's such an amazing place. We come from all over the globe, or at least our heritage we can trace from all over the globe. Some of us are from here, but that's a very small minority. But we're from all over the place. So what I'm going to do now is, having set sort of, thanks to your responses, we kind of have a baseline here in terms of how you perceive me, not knowing who I am. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share my story with you. So thank you, Sarika, for reading the responses. So I was born in so these are illustrations I've created out of actual photographs. Some are from my imagination, but this is an actual illustration that I created from, I was born in a Washington, D.C. Women's hospital that was actually built during the Civil War era for women of soldiers who were fighting in the Civil War. The hospital does not exist anymore. It's actually very close to the White House, used to be very close to the White House. So I'm an American citizen. I'm American by birth. And I spent the first 4 years of my life in the suburbs of Maryland, Washington, D.C. quite a bit. My dad used to work in Washington, D.C. And so I want to ask you this question. And one thing that happens to all of us who are certainly born in the US, it might even happen in other parts of the world, you get a few labels placed upon you, whether you like it or not, whether your parents want those labels for you, at least right now. It might change in the future. You get a name if your parents come up with a name, but you get a name. You get a gender label, which is changing now. My home city in New York, actually, we used to have male, female, but now they have a third option that parents can select. But race is also another one where somebody in a hospital administration decides what your race is, or hopefully they ask the parents. So I'm curious, take a guess what my birth certificate from Washington, D.C. in the 1970s says my race is. This one is going to be interesting, Sarika, so I'm going to rely on you to read this.
I'm on it. We have Caucasian, Asian. Someone else says either Asian or white. Someone else says South Asian, Asian. Black. Mm-hmm. Okay, it was the 70s, black.
Okay.
With no turban on a baby head, Hispanic. Clever. Someone else says black. So good call, thinking about the era and that there's no turban on a baby's head. Good job.
Yeah, it's interesting that people are taking the era into account. So actually, I'm surprised some of you actually got it right, because usually, and I get to ask this question from Seattle to New York, and most people don't get it right. I'm going to show you my birth certificate so you know that I'm not lying here, or I'm not making things up. This is my birth certificate. If you see at the bottom right, I'm white. I'm Caucasian. Technically Caucasian, but in the US we confuse, or in this story of Black and white people, and it's a story, perhaps one of the greatest, one of the most tragic stories ever told. Everybody who happens to be within this story, if you really look at the origins of the story, everybody who happens to be from South Asia is considered Caucasian, and in the US we confuse Caucasian with white. So technically I'm white, right? That's what the powers to be in Washington, D.C. at the time in the 70s said that I'm white. But I find it interesting, and the reason I share this is we're having conversations about race today in America, have been having them for a long time, but really having very robust conversations. And at the bottom of this conversation is a simple question. Who got to decide, who got to make up this story and say somebody is white, somebody's black? We know what the color of white and black looks like. The background of this slideshow is white. Most of us can agree on that, right? I don't know if a single human being whose skin color is white or not a single human being whose skin color is black. We're all a shade of brown, right? But we have this story in America. Hundreds of years we've followed this story. And you might say today, I don't care. I don't see color. And there are people who say that. But unfortunately, we have a society, culture, systems that are built around this story, and that has consequences. And I know most people don't see me as white. I don't see myself as white. But we do see a lot of people as white and black, and that has consequences. But I just wanted to sort of frame, as I share my story, to acknowledge the fact that so many things, so many rules, cultural, societal rules we live by are also stories that are created by human beings. We love stories, we love creating stories, we love telling stories, but stories are not always the truth. And they have consequences, bad and good, and they change over time. And my hope is we will somehow transform this story, move past it, and heal from the damage that this story has done. So my parents are from India, and my parents decided when I was 4 years old, they had their own personal reasons. They decided they wanted to move back to India. So I'm the younger child of 2 kids that my parents have. And so we moved back and moved back to the capital city of India, which is New Delhi, which is a city much bigger than my city, home city right now, New York City, approximately 20 million residents, a much older city than New York. And so my parents belonged to a religious ethnic group called the Sikh faith, the Sikh religion, also known as Sikhism at times. It's a very small group, even in India. It's less than 2%. So India has well more than 1 billion people, very small community, but it stands out because Sikh men and women, they don't cut their hair. Men have turbans, usually bun on top, turbans. Boys have, what you see on this screen is me in 1st or 2nd grade wearing what we call a patka, but it's a small turban. So we stand out. And so across the globe, if you look at in the UK, Canada, Malaysia, Singapore, are significant pockets of Sikhs. And the reason I like to share this photograph is I went to an independent school. We had uniforms to wear. A lot of schools in India, you wear uniforms. But I started wearing glasses really, really young. I was 6 years old when I started wearing glasses. And as a 1970s baby, glasses were not considered cool when I was a kid. I got bullied a lot at school, out on the streets, in my own family. I mean, people they thought some tragedy has fallen on me, that I had to wear glasses. My parents went to the step of, they said, okay, how do we get rid of these glasses? So they got me hard contact lenses. Some of you know what hard contact lenses are. They're not comfortable things to wear, little pieces of glasses. We have soft contact lenses now, but I tried them for a few weeks, did not work. I had to end up in a hospital one day. I had a piece of dust that went behind my contact lens. And I said, okay, forget it. We're not going to do this. I'm going to wear glasses and I'm going to live with however people respond to it. So one of the things that happened over the years is I speak 3 languages. English certainly is my first language in many ways. Punjabi is my native tongue. Hindi is a language that's spoken by a lot of people in India. And I kind of learned Punjabi and English first, and Hindi pretty quickly as a young child. So I learned these 3 languages, navigating in these languages, and family members, friends, at times strangers, started calling me variations of the word ugly in all those 3 languages. So I grew up, so by the time, I'm going to show you my next illustration here. This is me in high school. I had a growth spurt. I've always been skinny. I still am skinny. So with glasses and being skinny and also belonging to an ethnic minority, it brought its own challenges. And I'm by nature a very shy, introverted guy. A kid, grew up to be an adult who was very shy and introverted. So Unfortunately, I didn't get the memo that when somebody, is harassing you or bullying you, you should tell somebody, you should go tell your parents or a friend or certainly a teacher or somebody you trust. But I did not. So I lived through years of getting bullied, being told you don't belong because I belong to an ethnic minority or you don't look good. So I moved back to the United States after high school. And I always knew as a young child, I'm going to do that. I'm going to go to the US, that's home for me. That's the land of my birth. And I'm going to go to the universities there. So I moved back after high school, late 80s, first to the city of Los Angeles, very diverse. And I'm thinking, wow, this is going to be a great move, back to the land of my birth. And just before heading to college in Ohio, I got a job, struggled to actually get a job, eventually got a job in a mall at a hot dog stand. And something I did not anticipate is that when I move back to the US, people are also going to see me as somebody who doesn't belong. So I now had a new set of challenges where people just would call me things like raghead, genie, go back home, laugh on my face. So I went to college freshman year in Ohio State, and then I transferred back to California, to University of California system. This is an illustration from a photograph in my sophomore year when I basically decided, okay, I don't want to stand out anymore. I want to fit in. I want to become invisible. That was a desirable thing for me. So I said, okay, how do I do that? I'll take off my turban because most people in America don't seem to respond very well to a turban. They don't seem to place me as somebody who could be from the United States. So I took off my turban, didn't tell my parents who were still in India at the time. And I decided, okay, I'm going to next cut my hair. So I had a ponytail for a few weeks. And then I said, okay, I'm going to cut my hair and, try to fit in. And I mean, I still remember the day I cut my hair and I stepped out with short hair. It was kind of magical, right? I mean, suddenly a lot of eyes were not on me. People didn't stare at me as much. And I was like, oh, this is what it feels like to be, normal, when people are not looking at you, staring at you. And so I kind of spent the next 10 years trying to figure out, okay, who am I? What's my identity? I'm fitting in, but, how do I get to define myself? So I had very interesting experiences in Santa Barbara, where I went to undergrad. Then I eventually went to Berkeley for grad school. A lot of people confused me for being Hispanic. People would come up to me and start speaking in Spanish, which I'm sure is an experience not only myself, but I'm sure many from South Asia have that experience, and vice versa as well. I had many friends who have heritage from Mexico, Guatemala, Panama, and other places, and sometimes they were confused for being South Asian. So I went on this 10-year journey to rediscover myself, to find who I am. And what came to my rescue is something that some of you noticed when I asked you the question, what words come to mind? It's books. Something that I fell in love with in college. I did not read a single book cover to cover, and I am at some level ashamed to acknowledge that while we're having this talk as part of a library system. My dad, a very well-read man who used to tell us he's very well-read when we were kids, but for whatever reason, some of them are financial reasons, he did not have any books at home. He did not encourage us to read books. So I didn't get to read a single book cover to cover for pleasure until I was in college, and I had roommates and friends who loved books. And so I started reading books because I was partly jealous, and I also thought there must be something magical about these things that people have whole bookshelves of. I had a roommate in sophomore year and into junior year, and he became a good friend of mine. He had a bookshelf in his bathroom. I mean, he read books all the time. And I was like, well, maybe I should give it a shot. So I did start reading books for pleasure, and I fell in love with them. And through books, I discovered people like Oliver Sacks, Aldous Huxley, Frantz Fanon, Pluto. I mean, there's Plato, and so many. And so for me, after a few years, I really fell in love with books about Buddhism. Buddhism is a very accessible faith, way of life through books. And my entry into Buddhism was really mostly through Tibetan Buddhism, although you can, we have so many teachers, Thich Nhat Hanh, who recently passed away, Vietnamese Buddhism, Japanese Buddhism, Zen Buddhism. There's so many journeys within Buddhism that are so easily accessible through books. So I fell in love with Buddhism. And so my journey back into the Sikh faith kind of comes in through Buddhism. And in my late 20s, early 30s, I finally said to myself, okay, you know what? I left this faith, this heritage I was born into. I'm going to give it a shot for the first time in my life. So I moved. This was kind of happening in parallel while I was moving to Berkeley for grad school to study public health. For the first few months, I stayed with my brother, who had his own journey. He had moved from India to the US as a software engineer. And he was really into the Sikh faith. So it was kind of strange. You know, I was coming from a Buddhism, Taoism phase. He's coming from a Sikhism kind of phase. And it was a strange few months, but it was kind of really powerful as well. And so I decide, okay, I'm gonna don the turban. I'm gonna grow my hair long. It took me 2 years to grow my hair from bald head to I had a mohawk, a short phase of a mohawk, just a few hours. I didn't have the courage to step out with a mohawk out on streets of California. So it took me 2 years, grew my hair long, put it on top of my head in a bun, and I donned a turban for the first time in 10 years in August 2001. And by this time, I actually was living in Connecticut and working in New York State, a few miles north of New York City. So it's August 2001, and most of you know what happened. Well, all of you know what happened a month later, the attacks of 9/11, the tragedy of 9/11. And 9/11 really had a very profound impact on all of us, but some of us more than others. I had to process that tragedy as an American, but I also had to live with the fact that now suddenly, within minutes at work and out on the streets of New York, well, New York State, and eventually in New York City, I mean, I was the ultimate other in the weeks and months and years after 9/11. Everybody took liberty to call me names: Osama bin Laden, Taliban, go back home, terrorist, flipping me off. I mean, it was intense. It was really uncomfortable. I did not leave my home for 2 weeks. And when I did, even on highways, people would roll down their windows while driving at 60, 65 miles an hour to do their level best to scream out of their windows while I'm driving, to tell me off. So I realized what was happening. I understood people are ignorant about who I am. People are hurt, they're vulnerable, they're anxious, they're fearful, because I was feeling those emotions. But I still, was asking myself, why do I have to go through this? I understand people are ignorant, they're feeling hurt, but why do people have to unload their vulnerability and fears and anxieties on other people? You find a way to process them, you go home, you do what you have to do. But unfortunately, human beings do this, right? We do it all the time. We do it in all cultures. We take out our vulnerabilities on other people. We take liberties with our ignorance and our stereotypes and our vulnerabilities to unload on other people. So the question that I had posed to you, a benign sounding question, where do you think I'm from, might sound benign, but in a post 9/11 environment, where I'm from and where you perceived that I'm from, it takes a very profound meaning, because those, and most Americans, even today, their first instinct is to see me not as American. And so when you have something like 9/11 happening, it's very profound. So the first victim of hate and bias crime after 9/11 was a Sikh man in Arizona. He was a gas station owner who was shot and killed. And since then, many brown people, Sikh, Hindu, Christian, Jewish, Hispanics, Italians, have been attacked, killed, verbally abused. And it's, it kind of goes up and down with news cycles. So there are certain times when things get better. And even now, we've had incidents where people misperceive those who wear turbans and beards and take liberty and tell them, go back home or worse. So what came to my rescue, fortunately, was a cartoon. A few weeks after 9/11, everybody was trying to respond to the attacks of 9/11, and cartoonists were doing a great job of responding to what happened in Afghanistan. Well, eventually what happened as we responded to 9/11 and at home. And I remember this one cartoonist, his name is Mark Fury. He lives in the Bay Area in San Francisco. He still does. He eventually won a Pulitzer Prize. He created a cartoon titled, what was the title? Find the Terrorist. That was the title of the cartoon. It's an animated cartoon and fast rotating images of men. So you had to click on each. This was an animated cartoon. So you click on the face and you try to get an introduction to, who is the terrorist. So there was a brown man, there was a Hindu man, Sikh man, Hispanic man, and a white man. And it turns out that white man, he was Joey, and he had committed a hate crime against a fellow American who happened to be Muslim. And Mark made the point, this cartoonist, that somebody who's committing a hate crime in post 9/11 America happens to be a terrorist. It was a profound point he was making, because even to this day, most news outlets, most political leaders in America will not use the word terrorist for Caucasians or white people. Those words are usually reserved for brown men or black men. So that was to me very profound when I saw that cartoon. I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. And he did capture my predicament. I had never seen Sikhs, turban and beards being represented usually in a nice way in cartoons. So Mark captured my predicament, and I realized after a few weeks, he's not going to probably create another cartoon capturing my story. So I decided, okay, I'm going to start creating cartoons. I'm going to teach myself how to create cartoons. And I was an engineer by day, and I became a cartoonist by night, and I've been creating cartoons ever since. And I'm going to show you a few cartoons of mine. I'm going to actually quickly skip this slide here because I want to make sure I sort of get through the story, and me and Sarika get to have a conversation and hopefully take your question. This was one of the early cartoons I created. It's an eye chart. Most of you recognize, hopefully, as an eye chart. It's easy to read from the top. I'm not what you think I am. Look beyond the turban and beard. And the point that I'm trying to raise here is, this instinct we have of judging people based on looks. You might guess correctly, but it's not doing us any favors as human beings, as societies. So I really want us to take a step back and say, okay, I'm going to take a guess here, but I don't know this person. This person is a stranger to me. The only way I can get to know them is if they tell me who they are. That's the only way you're going to know who somebody is. This is a cartoon created based on a real life character. His name is Vishavjit Singh. He lives in the United Kingdom. He is from India. He has been in the United Kingdom for the past 30 plus years. He's a farmer by trade, lost his wife, moved to the UK to stay with his kids, was lonely, got depressed. So he started running, and he got really good at running. So he started running marathons, and he was very good at running marathons. He started breaking world records in his age category in the late 80s. He's 85, 86 years old, and he kept running until the age of 100. And he kept breaking world records until the age of 100. He does not run marathons anymore. He only runs 5 and 10K now. He raises money for charity. He's still alive. He turned 110 this past April, and he still runs. I consider him a real life superhero, somebody who, he raises money for charity. And by the way, when he came to New York City, there were people when he ran the marathon who took the effort and time to call him Osama bin Laden from the sidelines. But I consider him one of my favorite human beings on the planet, who, despite whatever challenges he had in life, he turned it into something very positive. So cartoons, where do I get my ideas for cartoons? From all over the place, my own experience, real life stories. I dream in turban and beards. So you've seen hot air balloons. You probably have not seen a hot air balloon with a bun on top, but physically, it's possible you can have a hot air balloon with a bun on top. So this was a morning dream I had many years ago, and I sketched it. And I'd love to show it to people that maybe one day somebody will create a Sikh hot air balloon And you can write on it and you can ask somebody, why is there a bun on top of a hot air balloon? And somebody can then tell you a little story. It's inspired by Sikh people who have long hair and have buns on top of their heads. We can certainly use humor to educate people. Okay, this is a fictional cover of a magazine that you all probably have heard of, the New Yorker magazine, almost 100 years old, famous for its cartoons. Now, New Yorker, for most part, usually has had cartoons that are not very political. It's, usually humor, social, cultural humor. They have lately, in the last few years, have gotten into more political covers for the magazine. Why did I create this cover? Most cities in America today have a policy that somebody who looks like me cannot serve on police forces. There are rules. Uniform rules. You have to look a certain way, clean shaven. Somebody made up this rule that you have to have a clean shaven face, right? It's human beings who make up these rules. And to most people, it might make sense, but I like to remind people, not many years ago, in the last century, women could not serve in police forces. African Americans could not serve in police force. Hispanic Americans could not serve. Indigenous Americans could not serve. Why? Because people made up reasons, right? Women are not strong enough. African Americans are not full human beings, right? I mean, we make up our own rules and then we justify them, and we can be very, very good at making up those rules. So today, these rules exist for Sikhs, Muslim men. By the way, the United States Armed Forces also does not allow Sikhs to serve. You have to fight, put in a legal exception. We used to be able to serve until the early 80s, and President Reagan actually created a new policy that we could not serve. So again, it's human-made policies. We have to be able to say, look, it doesn't make sense. Let's change it. Let's be more inclusive, right? We've done it. We've done better. We've made a lot of progress. Let's do this as well. I will say, though, my home city of New York now allows turbans. It does not allow unshaven full beards. And there are other cities that are changing these policies, but hopefully in the near future, that will change as well. Okay, I would like to talk about Canada, our lovely neighbors to the north that take a lot of pride that they're more progressive than us. Might be true, but that does not mean they don't have problems. A few years ago, in the eastern province of Quebec, there is a federation, soccer federation for little kids, middle schoolers. It's managed by adults, and the adults who manage this federation decided kids with turbans cannot play soccer. Why? Because they're a danger to themselves and other kids on the field. It does not make sense. When I share this story with most people, with kids, they're all like, well, that doesn't make sense, Vishavjit. I'm like, yes, you're right. We should tell these adults it doesn't make sense. This became national, international news. Fortunately, it had a good ending. The policy was taken back, and nobody ever really explained, honestly, why this policy came into place, although behind the scenes, we kind of, the stories were bubbling up that the adults who manage this federation in Quebec did not want Muslim kids to play soccer, but they didn't want to say it out loud as Muslim kids. So they were smart. They're like, what can we do to prevent Muslim kids to play soccer? Let's have an en masse rule for anybody who has religious artifacts, Jewish yarmulke, Muslim skull caps, Christian crosses, Sikh turbans. None of you are allowed. Right. So people get, as I mentioned, people, they're smart about their racism. I'll share another example. Many cities in Europe, nations that are beacons of democracy, have come up with new policies in the 21st century preventing Muslim and Sikh men from, for example, getting driver's license. I cannot get driver's license in certain cities in Europe because they will not allow me to have my turban on. I cannot walk into some public buildings in Europe because they have policies against religious artifacts not being allowed in a public building. France, believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, France does not allow turbans, any religious artifacts in public schools. My kids cannot go to a public school with a long hair and a turban on top. So either they have to go to a private school, be homeschooled, or leave France. These are 21st century policies. So again, beacons of democracy who unfortunately are taking some steps back. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I should have actually put a question in here about this. This is an amazing story. The first city in the United States that has had a Sikh mayor with a turban and beard, ladies and gentlemen, is not Portland, it's not Seattle, it's not Philadelphia, it's not New York City, it's Charlottesville. Like human beings, cities have complicated histories. And Charlottesville forever have the distinction of having the first Sikh mayor with a turban and beard. And we know Charlottesville has a very complicated history around race and racism, but that does not mean Charlottesville has not made progress, and that Charlottesville is not more progressive in some ways than New York City and Seattle or Portland, right? So this is an example from 2012 where this gentleman, who happens to be an architect, was on the city council, was selected to be the mayor of that city. Most of my cartoons are about people with turban and beards because I'm self-projecting. I don't see myself represented in American culture broadly. But one thing that I have not been able to not respond to is race and policing, and at large, how African Americans and Black Americans have to live with some of the challenges in the US. So as you've heard my story, post 9/11, it's been very hard for brown people like myself, especially those who have turban and beards. But I'll be very honest to say this. My life is a lot easier than a Black man's life. I live in Harlem, New York. And I can tell you this much, I don't get pulled over by cops. I don't get cops called on me. People harass me, they tell me to go back home, but I don't have Sikhs at large in America do not have cops called on them. That story that I mentioned to you, the story of Black and white people, that 500-plus-year-old story, it's a very powerful story. And it's in our DNA, it's in our culture, it's in our history, it's in our architecture. And that story today is what's impacting how Black Americans get to live. So it is not a statistical accident that on a monthly basis, somewhere in America, a Black man gets shot and killed by cops, or gets cops called on them. It's how we see Black people. I'll share an example with you. This is one of the last cartoons I'm going to share with you. This was a cartoon created in response to a story on NPR a few years ago. It was a story based out of the city of Los Angeles that does community policing. Many cities in America have been doing community policing. And so as part of this effort, an African-American civil rights lawyer got access to police officers one-on-one in private settings, anonymous. I don't want to know your name. We're not going to record your name. Just tell me, what are some of the challenges you face as a police officer and what's working? And as in this story, one thing that stood out to me that I still remember, this lawyer basically said every police officer, white, Black, Hispanic, man, woman, did not matter. They almost all of them acknowledged in private, they shared this vulnerability. I fear Black people. I fear Black boys. They said that in this very private space, knowing nobody's recording them, nobody's going to share their names. They said that in their private space. And I would like to venture that a lot of us, somewhere deep inside, if we don't have fear of Black people, we certainly have stereotypes of Black people. Most Americans do. So keeping that in mind, police officers have a very difficult job. And now add on top of that, you get called into a crime scene or a potential crime scene. You have this fear of Black people. And now you're going into that tense situation. Stereotypes are amazing things. In that tense situation, just like, I mentioned to you my own story that people see me as not American and, tell me to go back home. In that tense situation, those stereotypes kick in, that fear kicks in. And so a wallet becomes a gun, right? A phone becomes a gun. A Black person in a Starbucks becomes suspicious. A Black student at Yale University taking a nap becomes suspicious. These are actual stories, ladies and gentlemen, that I'm sharing with you, right? So I acknowledge that I grew up both in American South Asian culture with a lot of anti-Black bias. It's taken me a very long time to unlearn those. I still have some ways to go. I still, at times, in my head, have anti-Black ideas, thoughts that come up, and I have to check myself and say, okay, Vishavjit, okay, you had it because you're American, you're South Asian, you have it, but don't act on it. But some of these impulses are also unconscious bias as well. So those are the hard ones. There is this Captain America connection to my story that some of you mentioned early on. About 10 years ago, friends and fans were telling me, Vishavjit, you should go to a comic festival, especially New York City Comic Festival. We have one of the biggest comic festivals. So I decided in the year 2011, okay, I'll go. I'll go as an exhibitor. I'll showcase my work. I'll rent a table. And so that year, the first Captain America movie had come out. And I had this idea that Captain America should have a turban and beard. Captain America should fight hate and intolerance, one of the best villains that are out there. So I created this poster and I went to the New York City Comic Con, and people saw the poster and they kind of, so this was a marketing ploy that I deployed, and people were just like, wow, that's interesting. Some people liked it. Some people were like, why does Captain America look like a Muslim? Why does Captain America have a turban and beard? So it started conversations. And I'm like, well, maybe I'm onto something. And a photographer in passing asked me, Vishavjit, you should come back next year as dressed up as Captain America. And I said to her, I don't think so. Absolutely not. And my reasons, she didn't ask me why, but I knew my reasons. I'm skinny, I have a turban and beard, post 9/11 America. People have told me all kinds of things, go back home and worse. I don't want to stand out anymore. Or any more than I already do. So it took her a year. She convinced me a year later to don the uniform. I practiced at home with a shield, freaked out. She bought me a uniform online from an outlet in China. I put it on at home. I freaked out. I went to Sports Authority, bought football and baseball pads, shoved them in my legs, shoulders to make myself look big. My wife said, Vishavjit, you look like a cartoon. Please don't do this. If you're going to step out as Captain America, you will step out as yourself. It took me weeks, prepared myself, and June 2013, I did step out as Captain America. This is Central Park, and something very magical happened that day. I literally felt like I was in a parallel universe. Suddenly, people saw me as American. People started coming up to me, taking photos of me without permission, giving me hugs. And ladies and gentlemen, mind you, I'm not somebody who gets hugs from strangers, and never. But in that uniform, I do. People followed me for hours. This was an accident. We did not plan on me coming out of the subway station with the A train. I got access to a fire truck. There was a parade happening that day. We did not realize it. This was a fire truck that was a command center truck. We asked the officers politely, can we have your truck? Captain America can have the truck. They all left their truck and let me have this truck for 20 minutes. That was my privilege that day. The privilege of a fictional superhero does not exist, but that uniform has that power that a turban and bearded man, American that day became safe enough for people to say, you know what, yeah, you can have my truck. I got pulled into weddings, believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen. It was a strange day. I realized the power of fictional stories. You can use stories to do good. One last thing I want to share with you. Sarika, how am I doing on time?
Well, it's 6:40. It's 47 here.
Okay, good. We're good. We're good. Okay, awesome. We will have
so we have little time.
So this last story I'm going to share with you. So I was out for 9 hours. And somewhere in the middle of that day, I was in Central Park, and you see this little kid up there? He saw me silently for 10 minutes. And he eventually goes to me, what are you doing? I said, I'm Captain America for the day. No, you're not. Why not? Because you're not white. I'm thinking in my, I have this conversation in my head, okay, little kid, if you saw my birth certificate, you would have a different sort of conversation happening in your head. But I said to him, okay, that might be true that I'm not white, but you do know Captain America is not real. He's a fictional superhero created in 1941. We're in the 21st century. Captain America could be Black, Hispanic, Asian, turban and beard as well. He thought for a moment and he goes, Black, yes. Hispanic, maybe. Turban and beards, no. And the thing about this kid was, he was not being mean. I saw him. I mean, he was a sweet kid. He was being very honest. That's the beautiful thing about kids is they're very transparent in their, just even if they see differences. And I saw him as being just genuinely honest about how he sees me. And I said, okay, I hear you. But keep in mind for the rest of your life, you're going to have this image of me. Captain America, turban beard, skinny, glasses, and you will never be able to voluntarily delete that image from your head. And, we parted ways, and I thought this was the last day I will ever do this, but this whole performance art took a life of its own. I wrote an op-ed essay. The photographer released a few photographs. I started getting invitations to late night comedy shows, and I've been a performance artist since. I'm a full-time DEI public speaker. I do performance art. I travel across the US. I share my story, and I encourage, inspire, motivate others to share stories, because once you get to know somebody's story, it's a little bit hard, not impossible, it's a little hard to stereotype them. So I asked this question of you one more time. What words come to mind now that you know a little bit of my story? So Sarika, let's see what responses come in.
Folks need a little bit of time to type their answer. Oh, Becky says, still small, yet
I like
powerful."
that.
We have superhero, brave, a winding journey from Lizzie. Life is unpredictable. Brave, determined, creative, integrity, brave and funny. And Johanna says Captain America. Margot says joyful. We have courageous from Elide. Any others?
You know what is amazing is about this, and I think you all kind of know this. You know, this is the power of stories. You know a little bit about my story. And this is true for all of us, right? Even I know I sometimes judge people. You know, if we all gave each other somehow as society, we gave each other a chance to tell their stories. I'm not saying we're going to live in a perfect world, but we would definitely live in a world that's going to be a bit more chaotic and complex for us to quickly rush to judgments and perhaps, you know, have this understanding, you know what? Okay, we have a lot in common. And one last thing I would like to say is, you know, I know we hear this thing, oh, we have a lot in common, you know, the love and compassion, you know, we're beautiful human beings. I will say this to you, what we also have in common, probably more than anything else, is our ability to have prejudices and stereotypes about each other. That is one of the most common attributes we have as. So maybe that should be our starting point. Hey, here are my stereotypes and prejudices about other people. What are yours? And I really feel that if we really sort of brought that aspect of our stories in, and that sort, it's a vulnerable space, we might be able to better solve the problems that we're having in America today, because we have camps in America. You know, we have judgments, racist, this, that, I don't do this, there. I really genuinely feel that if we went into that space saying, okay, I have stereotypes about Black people as well, for example, so do you. Let that be a starting point for a conversation. And maybe we will have the difficult conversations that civil rights attorney had with police officers in LA. On that note, I'll stop here so me and Sarika can hopefully have a conversation. And I'm sorry, I did my level best to stay into that 35 minutes. I might have gone a little bit over.
That's okay. I think everyone enjoyed it so much. I would say let's give a hand, but Zoom. So we'll just give a wave. And you got a lot of love from the chat. Of course, we have the Zoom version of applause. I want to give a shout out to my auntie, Kalpana Fai. She says, the words that come to mind with knowing your story a little bit more is courage. We have a beautiful bridge, and there's a lot of love from chat. Somebody asks if you guys can be friends. So that's delightful too. I do the same thing. I'm like, oh, I want to be your best friend now. We had a question from way early on in the presentation from the chat, question from Kate, which was, what was the first book you ever read?
Ooh, that's a very good question. I don't know.
I don't even know
if I can remember. Actually, well, no, I don't think I remember that now. That's a great question. And I'm going to have to now think about that, and maybe I will get to that answer.
And maybe we can all think about that. We have another question. So what is next for you?
Oh, that's a great question. So I am actually right now, some of you might know it, Sarika, I think you know this, but I am working on a short animation film. I have been working on it for the last 2-3 years. There's a filmmaker from Southern California who I worked on actually, I'm going to go to the next screen here so you can see this. There is a short film on YouTube called Red, White, and Beard. And you can Google it and find it. And so I worked with this filmmaker a few years ago, and him and 2 other filmmakers came to New York, spent 3 days with me, and created this wonderful short film. And so the second part of it is he really fell in love with my story. So he approached me a few years ago saying, Vishavjit, I want to actually tell your story. So we're actually working on a short animation, which is right now in final stages. We have an animation company in Australia that is working on it. It's going to come out in April. We're going to submit it to the top film festivals that are out there, Sundance, Cannes, Southwest by Southwest, and a whole lot of other film festivals in the US, a lot of local film festivals. And hopefully it gets accepted. It comes to cities all over the US and beyond. And our hope is at some point then we can just kind of launch it online so people can see it. So that's the really big project that I'm working on. And the other one that I really want to do is have a graphic novel, or maybe a kind of like a graphic novel slash or an illustrated memoir. So that's another thing that I would love to work on. Great question.
That was actually my proposal, was that you do a graphic novel memoir, not just because of Everybody Reads, although that's a good enough reason, but because it's totally my jam. So yes, get on that, and then you come back here and we talk about it.
Absolutely.
So we, I don't know if you want to end your screen share, if there's more with your slideshow.
I can stop, yes.
Then we can see you. Oh, now I lost you. Oh, there you are. Okay. We're in the gallery view right now. Should we, okay, I see Linda has a question. Do you want to unmute or put on your camera, Linda? Linda, are you there?
There, okay.
Okay.
First it said that the host wouldn't allow. Okay, then on that note about your creating a graphic novel, have you read, or I recommend you read, Aren't You Hot in That?
I have heard about it. It's on my reading list, but now that you mention it again, I'm going to put it up my reading list. Yes.
Yeah, it will help you if you do a graphic memoir.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's hilarious.
Thank you.
And learn and teachable.
Absolutely.
Thank you. When I was watching or looking at the pictures again of your Sikh Captain America series, and I admittedly, after having kids, I sort of fell into a hole and I haven't kept up with all the Marvel films. I'm chronically 10 years behind on things. But I've noticed that there's been a lot of talk about costume upgrades in these new movies and in the more recent movies. And yours is straight up vintage, which I really enjoy.
Yeah.
How did you feel about the straight up vintage, which I think in the first movie, they kind of made fun of it. Well, didn't they make poke a little bit of fun at his helmet and his costume in the first movie? Did I make that up? I might have made that up.
I mean, so you're right. I mean, there's a transition. Yeah. I mean, in the early days, when these films came out, you could only get those leotard skin tight uniforms.
Right.
Yes, and I now wear the uniform that's inspired by Winter Soldier. So it's, it's really cooler looking. It's got padding on it. I actually need to upgrade now. So I really did feel very vulnerable when I first wore the old school. It really, I really felt naked. But once, people responded in a very positive way, I was like, okay. So yeah, that's an interesting journey. Yes. Costumes and how they evolve over time. That's a whole different story.
Awesome. And Lizzie has a question. Thank you, Lizzie. Did your children, or do your children, face the same struggles that you experienced?
That's a great question. Yeah. So I don't have my own kids, but I can tell you an unfortunate statistic. Sikh kids in America face, unfortunately, bullying happens in the US, right? It's actually not at very low levels, it does happen. But when you look at all the statistics, Sikh kids are bullied at twice the national average. So approximately 60 to 70% of Sikh kids report getting bullied. Even my home city of New York, that percentage of kids, and I'm talking about kids who go to Queens, it's a very diverse borough. They get harassed by kids from all different backgrounds. And what is unfortunate a lot of times, teachers and principals in those schools have not taken proactive steps to address those issues. So it's gotten better over the last few years, but we have long ways to go, long ways to. That's why I'm really big on our teachers, and we as adults need to be very transparent about our own vulnerabilities and biases with kids. And then kids are very smart. One of the smartest human beings on this planet. I work with them a lot. If we're honest about our vulnerabilities, they will be honest about theirs with you. And that is one of the strongest learning tools you don't tell kids, hey, don't do that, that's wrong. You tell kids, listen, when I was your age, and even when I was an adult, I did this and I realized this is not cool. Or maybe you got harassed and you share those stories. And that's what really get kids to go like, oh, okay, all right, I see that. So I use that strategy, and it really does help when I work with kids. But that's a great question.
Actually, that answers, I think that somewhat answers Eric's question about how Sikh kids that you have met when you're dressed as Captain America and have responded seeing themselves. And I mean, it related, as I just said, that I have kids. I mean, to be perfectly honest, I have this fear too, because of the way what I experienced growing up, also born and raised here. And especially in a city like Portland, I'm not gonna lie, this is just the reality that I have. I worry for my two kids as they go through school. So far, so good.
Yeah.
But they're 5.5 and 2. So it's a long journey. And I hope things only improve, because when you and I were little, it was not a pretty place.
Yeah.
So
I will say, I will add one thing is, having worked with kids for the past few years, I do feel kids today are a lot more open to diversity than when I was their age. That's a silver lining. So that does not mean, that kids don't stereotype each other, they don't bully. The thing is, they are picking up those cues from parents, broader culture, but because of the internet, they're also exposed to a heck of a lot more diversity. But we have long ways to go. And I do feel storytelling is such a powerful tool. So I would encourage all of you, Sarika, you as well, get the little ones to somehow tell their stories, because as they start telling, kids connect to different parts. So what I find is kids connect to different parts of my story, and I become more human and American to them as they're like, oh, he was bullied as well. Oh, he has that too. And that hook it's beautiful, right? Then they just look past my turban and beard.
maybe I'll just make you talk to my kids' schools.
Sure.
I'm going to use my personal hook there. It is 7:01, and I don't want to end this, but I think that I'm not allowed to keep going.
Yes.
Wait for
I know.
library staff to tell me yay or nay. And Lizzie says that's a wonderful message. Thank you. And actually, you're getting lots of thank you and love from the chat.
Thank you all very much for being here. Wonderful questions. Your responses were amazing. Thanks for being very responsive to this question. And I think you all are a pretty amazing bunch. You're very well read. I can tell that from your responses. Yeah, please keep having this. Please keep sharing the love of books. Donate books if you can. And hopefully one day soon I will be in Portland in person and hope to see you.
So yeah, guys, we need to get Vishavjit here in person. It's not been happening, but when things are a little safer, let's all rally together and make that happen. See, we got Portland love coming in from.
Yes, I know. I go to Seattle. I was telling Sarika, I go to Seattle a lot. So I want to now move down to Portland. So we're going to make it happen in 2022.
Don't make me get all auntie on the situation, because I will. Okay.
Okay. All right. It's going to happen. I'm going to see you soon. I'm going to see you all soon. You all stay safe and well. Wish you all the best. And thank you again to the library, Allison, Sarika, Israel. All the best to you. And I look forward to hearing stories from Mira Jacobs' trip to Portland, or virtual trip. Is that a virtual trip? Am I?
No, it's a real live.
Everyone, please go and tell everyone to go. Yes, that'll be awesome.
So feel free to make an extra trip. Thank you all so much for joining. Thank you so much, Vishavjit Singh. That was incredible. I think we don't want to end, but we are a little bit past time. Thank you all for joining this evening. Super duper special shout out thanks to everyone that I texted very last minute with the last minute push, and for everyone else who joined too. Thank you for your questions. Yes. We have a survey for you all to fill out. It just takes 3 to 5 minutes, and it's posted in the chat. And it's posted again in the chat. Allison is on it. Israel is on it. And I really appreciate this event, especially as a South Asian American living in Portland. I love everybody reads. So thank you so much, Vishavjit. And thank you all for joining. Have a wonderful night.
Thank you, Sarika. Thank you all. Bye.
Hey, Allison, do you want me to just go ahead and shut her down? All right. Thanks, everyone.
Oh, I forgot to shout out my auntie. Happy birthday, Kaltnafe.